What's up, everybody? Welcome to the PickSix podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL podcast. I'm Brinson. I'm your host. It is Monday, August 23rd, and the PickSix podcast is brought to you today by, that's right, Bud Light. Bud Light is the official beer sponsor of the NFL. Drink a limited edition Bud Light team can as you listen along with us to get one of these fantastic team cans. I've seen the artwork. They are cool. Go to budlight.com/delivery to order. That's budlight.com/delivery to get yours sent to you today. Joining us to talk about the preseason week 2, the one, the only Cody Benjamin. What's up, man?
It's the first time I've been part of the cool sound effect thing. Yeah, that reminded me of being at the movie theater, and they used to do this commercial where they drop the ice cubes and then they pour the Coke, and then that was
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that made me feel nostalgic. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Those they don't yes, I agree. I'm not gonna I was gonna say something about drinking beer in movie theaters, but they've started doing that. That's more prevalent now, which I like.
It is cocktails. The whole thing. So
yeah, we've got a what's the name of it? It's like a Alamo Drafthouse. You ever heard of those?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have one in Raleigh, and if you go, it's a whole experience, man. You got wait staff. You get told to put your phone down. I saw Toy Story 4 there. So
yeah. Will, I don't know if you know this, but I wrote a whole book about movie theaters, and so I'm all in on this stuff.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I'm all in on these theaters.
So, I'm like, have you heard of Alamo Drafthouse? Like, yes, I've written a book about movie theaters.
It's outside of football. It's a big thing. So
okay. What's your favorite movie of all time?
It used to be Inception. I would say Inception. That was the one I probably saw the most in theaters.
I've never seen Inception. I should probably rectify that, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah. We could do maybe sometime in the off season next year. We can do you come on and review it or something.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, we'll do a movie pod. I've also never seen what's the Avatar?
Yeah, that was a big one.
That was a big one.
Highest broke the box office record. Yeah.
I've ridden on the Avatar ride though. Let's see.
It's probably just as fun, maybe even more fun.
Have you ridden on that ride?
No.
It's pretty crazy. So it's a virtual roller coaster. Okay. In that you sit on this little motorcycle. It's like a little motorcycle type of stand, and you fly on this gigantic screen. If you feel like you're riding on one of those blue things. I'm not a big roller coaster guy. Then that one I was able to do it, but it was a little intense.
Yeah, it's like a virtual reality kind of a thing.
Yeah. You're just sitting there, but shaking you like this, and right. you're on the the screen is doing these wild dips, and it's worth.
It's kind of how I feel when I'm on this podcast sometimes. So.
Very good appropriation of my entire life in general. All right, let's talk about. By the way, 49ers Chargers is Sunday night. We were recording this on Sunday afternoon, so that game we'll loop back in and talk about that game later in the week. Also, Jaguars and Saints on Monday night. But that 49ers Charger game is 7:30. If this were a regular season week, we'd wait for the game and record it. But nah, this is a preseason. So Trey Lance was great, I hope. The rookie quarterbacks remain the top story across the league, Cody, because we know Trevor Lawrence is going to start. Even though he's listed second on the depth chart by Urban Meyer. We'll see how that plays out on Monday night. We also know Zach Wilson is going to start. Again, Trey Lance playing late on Sunday night, but then Mac Jones and Justin Fields are trying to give their respective teams enough to have them name the starters. Fields 9 of 19 for 80 yards, 4 rushes for 46 yards, and Mac Jones 13 of 19 for 146 yards. Zach Wilson 9 of 11 for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. I thought, and this is not taking away at all from Justin Fields, but I thought that Zach Wilson and Mac Jones in particular over the weekend really did a lot to raise their stock. If Justin Fields' stock moved up, and I think it did, it's probably more because Andy Dalton was hot trash.
Yeah, and I think it's just the contrast of skill sets there. Which we've talked about since the Bears drafted Justin Fields. Andy Dalton is just not even close to what you're drafting Justin Fields to be as your quarterback. So, yeah, I think everyone kind of expected to see a little bit of that special ability with Justin Fields, and we have. But, yeah, I agree. I've been impressed with honestly, I mean, every quarterback in the rookie class, the top of the class, to some degree. Trey Lance, I mean, he needs to obviously be a little more consistent throwing the football, and that was the case at NDSU too. But we saw, I think the stat was that Jimmy Garoppolo had never thrown a pass that was longer than Trey Lance's longest pass in week 1 of the preseason. And so we need to see more consistency there. But when I look at like Zach Wilson just throwing the football, I mean, I'm in on that. I don't know. I mean, I just see it, and again, that's a totally I don't want to say biased, totally, I guess, subjective eye test there.
No, I think that's important. I think,
yeah.
I mean, it's not even I am very big on the subjective sort of gut eye test when it comes to quarterbacks, golf swings, and baseball pitchers. Like, I think you need to be able to see, like, you have to see it and say, okay, yes, I get that. I see this and I can see how this is going to work out long term. I agree with you with Wilson. Like, you can just it's very fluid and loose, and you can tell he knows how to rip it. The other thing I would say too on Wilson, and I'll not to interrupt you and let you get back to it, but it just hit me while watching the game. You see these highlights of these throws he's making, and these guys, these coaches coming from the Kyle Shanahan system, they just get guys open for the quarterbacks. I mean, I'm not saying that he couldn't have made the throws in the tight windows, but that scheme that Mike LaFleur is running, Matt's brother and former OC there in San Francisco now, former quarterback, he came from San Francisco, now the OC in New York, and that scheme just seemed to translate. We've seen it work in like 4 or 5 different spots now, and I think that's going to benefit Zach Wilson in a big way.
Yeah, and if you throw in, I mean, if the other factors are working, if you got a good defense, I mean, it's kind of the unbeatable pairing when it's working, because if you can scheme guys open, great. And if you can't, you've got a guy like Zach Wilson whose arm clearly can get the ball there if it's a tight window. Again, like anyone who's listening to this podcast, we're not projecting like Zach Wilson is a Pro Bowler this year, but like just off the eye test and what we've seen so far, I mean, I think that guy has an NFL arm. And Mac Jones has also impressed me. I know that he became almost not a laughing stock, but just like because everyone thought the right play for the 49ers or someone picking high is the upside, not the safe quarterback like Mac Jones.
I mean, his name's McCorkle Jones the Fourth. If he played it
exactly.
He's in all these pictures. He's got Bama bangs and pink polos on. I mean, he's a parody, and I get it because I get this. I mean, I'm not a tall, handsome quarterback guy, but McCorkle Jones. The whole thing had a very like Southern vibe to it, and so I understood why it was crazy. Like, they can't draft Mac Jones third, but I think if he were doing what he's doing in San Francisco and they had taken him third, I think people would kind of be, all right, like, this is kind of okay. I can kind of see why they did this.
Yeah, I mean, again, all these guys have to prove things in real games, but Mac Jones to me, he's looked comfortable. He's looked comfortable in the pocket even when he has to move his legs in the pocket, and he has surprising amount to me of zip on the ball when he's throwing it. I mean, it's not necessarily a Zach Wilson like flick of the wrist, but I think he's got the arm. I mean, certainly the arm to, in my mind, warrant consideration early on this season to be the Patriots starting quarterback. So yeah, that's where I think all the guys have shown promising things. Trevor Lawrence, honestly, when we did the week 1 rankings for preseason performance of those first round quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence was number 5, I think, out of the 5 for me. And not because it was bad.
How'd that go over on the Twitter machine?
Not horrible. Nothing bad. No, and I mean, you could have made a case for Trey Lance because after the bomb, it wasn't great. And not because Trevor Lawrence was bad, but because when I looked at Zach Wilson and I looked at Justin Fields and I looked at Trey Lance, I saw like the special ability.
Yeah.
And Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he made some good throws, but he also sat in the pocket for a long time. He looked fine, but no, I think good signs for all of them.
There was one play in particular with Mac Jones where he was in the pocket and got pressured. He was sort of moving a little bit, but basically he got hit but didn't go down and made a great throw. And that's important because, it I think really highlighted what the strength, the theoretical strength that we thought Mac Jones would have, which is that, while he may not have this otherworldly physical skill set, his sort of his maturity as a player and consistency as a player and being in that Alabama offense, he wasn't disrupted by that. He didn't even have to gather himself. He just instinctually made the move and made the throw down the right side. He also had a great, Cam Newton had the touchdown pass to Jacoby Myers. But I just thought in general, Mac Jones looked like he has plenty of arm strength, plenty of mobility to be a quality quarterback in the NFL. And for the Patriots, I gotta be honest, like I think, and I tweeted this out, I think people need to bet on the Patriots to make the playoffs. They're plus money at Caesars right now, plus 125, I think, to make the postseason. They have a really good offensive line. Like, it's loaded. Like, their twos were beating down. I know the Eagles defense wasn't, didn't have everybody out there, but it was like a very clear mismatch in the trenches between New England and Philadelphia. They have Sony Michel looked pretty good. Like he was running.
You got like six running backs who could start.
Yeah, Stevenson, JJ Taylor, Damian Harris, and Mac Jones and Cam Newton both played well. And I still think that they will go with Cam as the week 1 starter because, and I know this is dumb, but if you go with Mac and he doesn't win games, you have to bench him for Cam, and that's a weird thing to do for a first-round rookie. I think Belichick probably prefers sort of the upside of Cam in terms of what they can do with running the ball. And then they have enough. The defense looked really good, and they have enough weapons on offense where I just think this is a team. You can either say 4 or 5, I guess, between the Chiefs, Bills. The Chiefs and the Bills feel like pretty much playoff locks early going into the season. The Ravens and the Browns, and somebody's got to come from the South, obviously. So just doing the math, there's a lot of slots, wide open slots, and I think the Patriots, to me, look like a team that can come back and make some noise in the postseason. But largely because I'm confident that if Cam struggles or Cam gets hurt, they can go to Mac Jones.
Yeah, no, it is a nice fallback plan. Like, there's that saying, it's nice to have we have 2 good quarterbacks, and usually that means something is not quite right. But no, I agree.
If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have
right.
One.
But I think it would be interesting. You mentioned their offensive line being loaded. Yeah, that we have to see in the regular season. I think that they have depth. That's for sure. It's just a matter of because. And we don't want to read too much into like practice reports, but I know like the whole week leading up to
that was the buzz, right? That the Eagles dominated the practice reps, and then who's it? Is it Elliott Shore Parks, who's the home run or touchdown or whatever. He's like, I could luck into a home run.
Yes.
But I saw Les Bowen who quote tweeted him and was basically like gave him an eye roll for the practice versus the game. Where you stand as a because you're an Eagles guy, because it doesn't sound like everything that was happening the week of matched up with what we saw in that game.
Yeah, and I think part of it is how many starters were playing. And again, like I think you obviously have some concerns if you're dropping a preseason game 35-0, but at the same time, if you're not playing any of those starters that were apparently dominating at practice all week. I mean, I think the Patriots did what they needed to do in the game, and reportedly the Eagles did what they needed to do in practice. I still think the arrow, like you said, is pointing up on the Patriots. It's just a matter like in the regular season when you're matched up against real cornerbacks and real defensive linemen.
Sure.
Mac Jones and Cam Newton may be solid, but you're talking about, is Kendrick Bourne going to get open? Is Jacoby, are these guys Nelson Aguilar, are they going to consistently give you chances to win? And I know they got the tight ends too, but that's going to be the question, their weapons as well.
Yeah, that game was Thursday night. I think Jacoby Myers, and I'm fully biased here in terms of, he's a former NC State guy, watched a ton of his games. He's just going to be good, though. I think he's going to be the Patriots' number 1 wide receiver. It wasn't fair to ask him to be that last year. I think it might be fair to ask him to do that this year. We'll see how those other guys come along. Any other thoughts are you worried that Joe Flacco is going to take Jalen Hurts' job?
I'm very worried. No, the absence thing of Jalen Hurts, the illness thing, like last minute, that was a little bit curious.
Oh yeah, that's right. God, man, this is how you know that preseason gambling is a thing now, because people are like, "How dare the Eagles? Yeah. How dare they?" It's like,
well, I think there was probably some fans too that were like, preseason tickets aren't expensive these days, but maybe some fans shelled out like $50 and parking tickets to see Jalen Hurts for a quarter or a couple series, But no, absolutely not. I'm excited to see Jalen Hurts in a real game.
I thought he only had 2 carries for 13 yards and he didn't catch a pass, but my subjective eye test thought that Miles Sanders looked kind of explosive, by the way.
I think, Miles Sanders, there's been some.
I've now drafted I've drafted a lot of best ball on Underdog Fantasy. 34% exposure to Miles Sanders. That's a lot.
I mean, he was like last year, he wasn't consistent, but when he touched the ball, like he was a big play guy. And so he had some long runs, some big touchdowns. I mean, I would draft him. I would get him.
He's in like the 5th round too, because nobody wants him.
Right. That's what I mean. The pendulum has swung a little too far, I think, on him.
He was going in like the back end of the 1st round last year, and now you can get him in the 5th round of these best ball drafts. It's crazy. I do, certainly some concerns about Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor. Your thoughts?
I mean, I think you see more from Devontae Smith, even just in that limited sample size. He had a couple of drops, but you can see the separation, the ability to just get in and out of his routes. Jalen Reagor, I mean, we don't have to rehash his rookie season, but I think the speed is there, but it's, is the route running ability there? Is the chemistry with the quarterback there? I think Devontae Smith is going to be more of a seamless transition. And that's another guy where I think, you're talking about, I'm not projecting Justin Jefferson numbers, but I'm saying he's going to be a popular pass target early on.
I tend to agree with that. It looks like at the very least, the Eagles may have finally gotten the wide receiver draft selection correct. We'll see. A lot of time left in that. We'll continue. We mentioned with the Bears, Justin Fields and Andy Dalton. Matt Nagy came out afterwards, after that game. And by the way, the Bears got their clocks cleaned. It was a mistake by me not to give out the Bears, the Bills plus points in the Mitchell Trubisky revenge game. What was I thinking? Trubisky went 20 of 28 for 221 and a touchdown. They scored like 21 points in the first quarter. Absolutely lit up the Bears defense. Andy Dalton, 11 of 17 for 146, a touchdown and a pick. He just didn't look good. I mean, he looked like he's lost out there. And the Bears offense was just lethargic as hell when Dalton was playing. A little bit better when Fields got in there. Fields went 9 of 19 for 80 yards, as we mentioned. To me, at this point, I just don't know how. It's so weird because you've got to balance playing the best quarterback while also preparing yourself for the future. The one thing about Fields, I thought that at times he looked like maybe a little bit overwhelmed by what the Bills were throwing at him from a defensive standpoint. And if that's the case, then I don't think you want to start in week 1. And that's why you would go with Andy Dalton. Also, as I mentioned with the whole thing with Cam and Mac Jones, I think something similar in how the Bears will want to approach it. I'm not comparing Matt Nagy to Bill Belichick. That would be foolish, but you don't want to put Fields out there, have him struggle. You lose games. You have to bench him for Andy Dalton. Then that's a whole hot mess. And so in my opinion, it is like as good as I think Fields will be. Cody, to me, there were some parts where he struggled a little bit against the Bills defense. And as such, like, I just think they're saying they're going to go to Andy Dalton early and they're going to stick with him. And that's just what they're going to do. And people need to stop. You can get mad about them doing it, but don't act like they're not going to do it because that's what Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are doing.
They're doing it. And Sunday Night Football.
It's just happening.
It's happening. And I guess the question, as it's been since they drafted Justin Fields, is how long is the leash? I mean, because it's going to be prime time right away for Andy Dalton. We know the prime time Andy Dalton. I think Andy Dalton's limitations. I know like the quotes from Matt Nagy about talking about like we need to see him in the regular season. Well, we've seen him in the regular season for several teams, for bad teams, for
the last 10 years.
Right. So I think, with Justin Fields, yes, he's got his own things to work on, but, so do all the other rookie quarterbacks. He's going to have growing pains, but he's going to give you a decent chance of winning. I think I'm just curious, what is it going to be that gets Andy Dalton pulled and finally lets the Bears say this is not Andy Dalton's team, this is Justin Fields? Is it an 0-3? Is it a 1-4 start? Like, somebody knows in the Bears, or maybe they don't, but they have to have some
I think that they look at this start. You're at Rams, Bengals at home, which should be favored by somewhere between 5 and 7 points, I would think, in that game, unless Cincinnati looks incredible in week 1. At Cleveland, there'll be, of course, a dog there, but it's a winnable game. That's probably 1-2 to start. But then you have the Lions and at the Raiders. So I think there's a decent chance that they're 3-2 after 5 weeks. I don't think that gets Andy Dalton benched. Now, 2-3 or 0-4, something like that is probably going to get him benched. But you have to be careful here too, because as I pointed this out before, and I'm going to keep hammering it home, week 6, Packers at home. Week 7 at Buccaneers. Week 8, 49ers at home. Week 9 at Steelers before your week 10 bye.
Right.
Do you want to play Andy Dalton for the easier stretch of 5 games to start and then bench him for Justin Fields against 4 playoff caliber opponents? That makes no sense.
You can't really pull the Dolphins card of last year where, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andy Dalton, the placeholder, gets you to a respectable record. I mean, it's week 10. By that point, you've got to know whether you're in the NFC North mix. And so, yeah, that's just, because you can make a case for, so Sunday night you open against the Rams and you figure they're going to have a good defensive plan. They've got good defensive talent. Maybe Andy Dalton is a safer option. He's played in the NFL. We can rely on our defense. Maybe you scrape out the upset. But still, at some point, you don't trade up for – we've had this conversation how many times, but you don't trade up for Justin Fields. You don't add him as your quarterback if you don't think he gives you a way higher,
ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing, too, is Andy Dalton, and when you make that switch – you might be playing a whole different style of football, because if Andy Dalton is in there, I would imagine you're trying to, have him control the football, lean on the run game, lean on the defense. When Justin Fields is in there, he's extending plays to a whole different degree. He's probably taking a few more chances. So it completely changes your strategy too. We'll see how the Bears handle it and which head coach is making those calls by the end of the year.
Agreed. It'll be the thing about the Bears too that I would be a little worried about I guess Bears fans won't want to hear this, but if I'm picking the Bears, or I'm a prognosticator who's on the Bears, or I'm backing the Bears in any way with my money, I'm not sure the offensive line is going to be great, and I think there's a chance the defense takes a step back. Yeah,
you can't. I'm not. I think that we've talked about the Vikings. They've got their own question marks. Beyond Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, the wide receiver depth chart is pretty bare. Those defensive pieces that they've added in there need to click into place. But no, I'm not. I think the Bears have a tough schedule. I think that it's probably not getting as much attention. I think their offensive line is a big question mark. So yeah, I think Justin Fields could be starting 2022 with a whole new regime kind of around him.
Indeed. And by the way, you know what? Let's go ahead and get an ice cold take presented by Bud Light. And this is my ice cold take. The Chicago Bears would have been better off retaining the services of Mitchell Trubisky and having him be the starter ahead of Justin Fields, or even being the backup in Chicago, than going with Andy Dalton. And they could have done that for nothing, because Trubisky signed as a backup in Buffalo. He looked good. And I realize that Buffalo is a different beast. They have a better talent of roster. They have better talent around him on the roster. But there wasn't any Josh Allen out there. It was just Mitchell Trubisky looking sharp and carving up the Chicago Bears defense. I understand it's a preseason game. I understand it's a revenge game. I get it. It's not, not going to read too much into it, but I think there's more upside in rolling the dice with Mitchell Trubisky and seeing if you can get something to work, and then you pull him for Fields if you have to, then going with Andy Dalton, and they could have done it for essentially the same amount of money. That is my ice cold take presented by Bud Light.
I think so. I agree with you in terms of playability. I think there's no question that if you're given Mitchell Trubisky at significantly less cost than Andy Dalton, I think it's a no-brainer that you're getting more potential in Mitchell Trubisky, regardless of what he's done in Chicago. But in real life, philosophically, that break just had to happen.
It had to
happen, and I wouldn't have gone to Andy Dalton. I might have just or given Andy Dalton $10 million and said over and over and over again, "Hey, this is your team, Andy. This is your team. We just drafted Justin Fields, but we're going to start you week 1, blah, blah, blah." I wouldn't have done all that. But I think, part of the reason Mitchell Trubisky looks so comfortable is probably because the pressure is off. He is out of the He's out of the Chicago spotlight. He doesn't have to be the Bears' first-round pick quarterback. But no, I agree with you. Ability-wise, we can continue to point back and say, look, Andy Dalton is a serviceable backup.
Yep.
But that's not what the Bears are calling him.
I think there's a decent chance that at some point Trubisky emerges out of Buffalo because he's on a 1 year, $2.5 million deal. And like you're saying, away from the pressure, he only had 12 starts at Carolina. It wasn't fair to make him the savior of a potentially broken franchise.
It's a perfect spot for him. I mean, look at Josh Allen and the type of quarterback that he, like Mitchell Trubisky thrived when he was using his legs. I mean, he can sit there, learn from Josh Allen, learn from their coaches. I think it's, absolutely a launching pad spot.
Let's touch again. We mentioned how good Zach Wilson looked. I thought Michael Carter, the rookie running back out of Carolina, speaking of Mitchell Trubisky, Carolina guy, Michael Carter, 10 carries for 52 yards in that Jets run game. I'm starting to come around to the idea that the Jets might be fantasy gold because they lost Carl Lawson. That happened. I don't think we talked about that on the Friday's podcast. I think it happened on Friday or Thursday night. Corey Davis, by the way, looks sharp as well. I'm intrigued by this Jets offense, and I think their defense is going to be probably terrible, but they could put up some points. And I think there's whether it's Tevin Coleman, Michael Carter, Zach Wilson, Corey Davis, Denzel Mims. What do you have? Did he even play on? I'm not sure if he played in that game, but he has looked better after reports that he was the 6th wide receiver on the depth chart. Tyler Croft caught a pair of touchdowns. I just think there's a little more. I have a lot more intrigue in this offense. And look, part of it, again, we saw how well, Kyle Shanahan's a very good coach, right? And we've seen Matt LaFleur leave Kyle Shanahan's team and go run the system with success in Green Bay. So I think there's a very reasonable case to be made that Mike LaFleur will have a similar, like maybe not 100% replicable because you have Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, but that he can go and have offensive success early on in New York with the Jets.
Yeah, and I think it starts with the quarterback too. And from our eye test, we thought Zach Wilson is a guy that can, at the very least, extend plays. He can, his arm is going to get him. I'm sure it'll get him into some trouble, but it'll also get him out of some trouble. So I think that's not going to make Denzel Mims catch the crucial third down in the red zone. But no, I think Corey Davis is somebody to really look out for. I mean, I think they've already shown a connection, and I just like the fact that. Maybe I'm reading too much into the preseason now, but I just like Zach Wilson's playmaking ability for everyone involved in that offense.
Agreed. And by the way, I hadn't thought about this until like literally right now, but Corey Davis had Matt LaFleur as his offensive coordinator for 1 year, I believe. And then when he left and went to Green Bay, and now he has his brother. So it's just interesting that those two guys, I'm sure they talk. I mean, they're freaking brothers. Very quickly on the Bengals and Washington football team game, the Bengals scored 13 points and largely looked like kind of crap. Washington scored 17, wasn't substantially better, but the story out of there, Jarrett Patterson out of Buffalo, the rookie, 16 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. I think it's just very notable because he was like crazy prolific in college at Buffalo, putting up big games. And now, you have Antonio Gibson there, he's going to be the guy. But with J.D. McKissick, Antonio Gibson, and Jarrett Patterson, I think this Washington team's can cook on offense.
It reminds me just a little bit of like the Patriots backfield. I mean, because you're talking about guys that, and again, like running backs are
full stat type guys and.
Yeah, but I mean, and Antonio Gibson, if you want to have one takeaway from it, it's probably that he is, we were already kind of leaning this way, but he's due for a big year, and he's got guys who can relieve him. And I think that's, such an intriguing, because if Ryan Fitzpatrick can stay healthy, and that's a big if, because he's inching closer to 40. He hasn't had a full season for a number of years. I think it was since he was with the Jets. But no, I like the running back field. I like the wide receivers. We're both trying to get water here, Will. We need these Bud Lights. Like we need like a little one of those straws, the backpacks.
I know it's like 900 degrees in my office right now. I would kill for an ice cold Bud Light. By the way, summer's almost here, Cody. I don't know if you're aware of that. I just felt like it's time to get the Bud Light plug in.
Isn't it? It's summer now, isn't it?
Oh wait,
right.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, no,
Summer is here.
Summer's almost gone, actually. In fact, summer's almost gone because there's only 17 more days until fans are back in stadiums for the kickoff of the regular season. And to celebrate, Bud Light just unveiled their limited edition team cans designed for the fans. There's a custom design for each fan base, so we can't wait to get our hands on some of them. You know, like they use hashtag Bolt Up for the Chargers, of course. It's like the Seahawks are like hashtag We Are Everywhere or something like that. Mile High Salute for the Broncos. It's very cool stuff. Blitzburg for the Steelers. Yeah, you're going to be wanting to get some of those. They're hitting stores now, and they're the only beer you're going to want to have in your fridge this season. So head over to budlight.com/delivery now to find out how to get yours delivered. budlight.com/delivery for a plethora of options on how to have beer sent to your house. Plus, we don't want to talk about Cincinnati and Washington for too long, so we'll move on to other matters. The Panthers got pummeled by the Ravens, and this is, I think, a good time to point out, Cody. I'm not sure if you're aware. There's we had let's see, 7 of them, 8 picks from me on Friday's show. 8 preseason betting picks, which is just an obscene number, but. One of them hadn't played at the time of recording because the 49ers minus 5.5. But of the 7 that have played, well, there's a tricky one because Detroit. I took Detroit plus 5.5, but the line moved to Detroit plus 7. So they lost by 6, which is crazy how good Vegas is. So I guess I should take that L. That's fine. 6-1 in the preseason picks. How about that?
Carry that. I mean, they talk about carrying momentum into the regular season. That's what John Harbaugh talks about with these, historic Ravens records in the preseason. You carry it in, and so we're gonna be expecting big things from you in the regular season.
Right. But the Ravens were one of those, and I said, look, just blindly bet the Ravens minus 3.5, and part of it, is John Harbaugh has a really good record in the preseason, but I mean, they weren't, they're trotting out Huntley as their quarterback. So it's not exactly they're not using their starters in this game. But the reason I really like the Ravens after reading what people were saying was that I didn't think Sam Darnold was going to play much. He only had 2 pass attempts, and Matt Rule said that he was thinking about holding Darnold out because they were worried that they didn't have the full complementary pieces around him. Now, that's fine. I mean, DJ Moore's banged up. Robbie Anderson's banged up. Terrace Marshall has looked really good in the preseason, but it's very concerning that they would be like, oh, so we can't play Sam if we don't have a line or the receivers around him. I mean, yeah, you want to have them, but that's a bit of a red flag.
I think it's a concern that should probably carry into the regular season. Speaking of, things carrying in, their offensive line investments this offseason, I think you could look back and say they were a little bit questionable, not to retain Taylor Moton or to they
kept Moton.
Yeah. No, I meant to. I'm not saying that was one of the reasons.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was obviously a plus. But the guys that they added at the price that they did, I think that there's probably other ways you could have spent that to protect whomever it was going to be under center. So yeah, I mean, I know there was reports of the Robbie Anderson extension talks, and I like the pieces that they have, but.
I think you're a year away minimum. Defense might be okay. Take a step forward. Unless Darnold just explodes.
Yeah.
And it was a rough weekend for Darnold too, because Zach Wilson looks so good. But I think I'm not trying to. I'm not going to be on any sort of bandwagon for Carolina heading into this year. Tua Tagovailoa getting people on the bandwagon. There, 16 to 23, 183 yards and a touchdown. Jacoby Brissett actually had a perfect passer rating, I believe. It's 8 for 8, 99 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, the freaking Dolphins lit up the Falcons 37-17. Felipe Franks and AJ McCarron did all the quarterbacking for Atlanta, who does not seem inclined to play their starters much in the preseason. That might be something to watch for week 3 if you want to bet on that game. The Dolphins, if you're a Dolphins believer, the AFC East just might be good. I mean, it looks like the Dolphins could be as advertised this year. I don't know if they're going to win like 12 games or anything, but I think they could potentially repeat that 10-win season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking for more of the same from Tua, from Tua this year, but more of what he did last year, which was be efficient, and then be able to obviously stretch the field a little more with the guys he has there. Jalen Waddle, Will Fuller, the guys they added. I think, the biggest takeaway for me is like you said, the AFC East in general. I mean, I know I'm getting a little too excited about the Jets because of just Zach Wilson looking, he can be flashy and the Jets might still be bad.
Yeah.
And same goes for Mac Jones, might look poised, but the Patriots, if their receivers, don't separate in the regular season, their defense isn't back to Bill Belichick standards. It's a different story. But yeah, I think the most intriguing thing is the AFC East, aside from maybe the Bills, who we do consider pretty much a lock. It's a toss up, and I think the Dolphins they're kind of, I don't know if they're like underrated right now, but I think it's possible just because of how much people have kind of gone out on Tua this offseason. So if he's efficient, if they can make some more big plays, I think the Dolphins are definitely in the mix.
The Lions, like I said, lost to the Steelers. The update there, I think, is probably that. And I was reading something on Behind the Steel Curtain. They wrote about it. They were like, it's not a battle between Haskins and Rudolph. People want to make it a battle, but it's not really one. And that Rudolph is just going to be the guy. And the logic there is that, is that Rudolph, by virtue of his knowledge of the system, is, he gives him a better safety net, I think, than Haskins if something happens to Roethlisberger. Big Ben, 8-10, $137 and 2 touchdowns, looked very sharp out there. That's a very good sign for them. Tampa Bay and Tennessee didn't play anyone. Oh, I took the Titans too. I didn't even have that on my my list. Dang, they didn't play anybody in that in that game. Kyle Trask, 13-26, 131 yards. Keyshawn Vaughn had a couple carries. None of the pass catchers really out there. So that's sort of a nothing burger from that particular game. One to focus on though, the Denver Broncos smoked the Denver Broncos, the preseason champions right now. They're killing people. They smoked the Vikings, they smoked the Seahawks, and Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater both had pretty good games. Teddy Bridgewater though may have cemented his starting role with this performance against the Seahawks, going 9 of 11 for 105 yards and a touchdown. Lock 9 of 14 for 80 yards. The general consensus, excuse me, we're dying here, Katie. The general consensus, I think, from beat writers and people around the team is that it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater, and the announcement's coming fairly soon.
Yeah, and you could have probably read into that a little bit just with George Paton being the general manager, obviously having that role in hand picking Teddy back, when he was with the Vikings. But, and again, they didn't give up a huge amount for him, but the whole thing was it's kind of played out the way we thought. Teddy is looking like the safer quarterback, again, in a small sample size here, but you just look at the numbers, you look at his performance, he's a guy that's going to go out and get the job done. He's not probably going to exceed expectations, but Denver's not asking him to do that necessarily. They want him to control the football, which is something that Drew Lock struggled to do last year. They have a defense that they think is going to be good. I think, yeah, it is definitely trending toward Teddy in week 1. Now, if you get to a point during the season when, you've got those situations like Teddy was in Carolina last year where he's keeping you in the game, but he's not winning it for you. Maybe that's when they roll out Drew Lock again and they see, hey, can you use the magic that you kind of showed at the end of your rookie season without, making kind of boneheaded decisions along the way.
Yeah, I think I've sort of come around to the idea that I was wrong in how I approached what the Broncos would do here, because my theory was, Locke gives you more upside. He's a younger player. Sure, Peyton didn't draft him, Elway did, but you want to try and make the second round pick work out. I think the Broncos look at the team as a team that can win now. And they should. Like, the roster is really good. As you point out, Peyton was in the building with Rick Spielman when they drafted Teddy Bridgewater in the first round in Minnesota. And so it makes almost too much sense if you're the Broncos and you're thinking through this and you're Vic Fangio, a conservative defensive minded coach, you want to go. Also, by the way, wasn't Pat Shurmur was Teddy Bridgewater?
Yes. Yeah. It's a totally conservative. Yeah. It all fits for Teddy.
Wasn't Pat Shurmur the OC with Teddy, or was he not there at the same time?
He was. I'm trying to think if they crossed over in Minnesota.
His year was the Minneapolis Miracle when Case Keenum quarterbacked him. So I think
Teddy was there. He just wasn't playing.
He wasn't playing because he got hurt. Right. But so they at least know each other, and there's some familiarity there. And yes, like Pat Shurmur, conservative, offensive guy. It lines up. Like, I've been thinking, they'll just go with the guy that they'll just go with the guy that gives them the most upside. But in reality, they want the guy who's not going to lose them games and who's going to win them games. And Teddy has looked sharp in the preseason so far. I think you have to be kind of high on Denver, even though Teddy typically tends to not excite people, especially after the way that he played at Carolina last year.
Yeah, the tough thing is, I mean, like you said, they have no choice. The staff, I mean, the current setup in Denver, this is the move to go with Teddy Bridgewater. But Teddy Bridgewater has looked good. Like, he's looked solid other places. It's just, is Denver trying to extend the current regime's tenure by getting to the playoffs, or are they trying to win it all? Because I think we all know that trading a late round draft pick to get Teddy Bridgewater, it's a placeholder move. It really is, until you can figure out the quarterback position, until you can say, we know what we have in Drew Lock, or we're getting Aaron Rodgers, or we're doing something else. So no, I think Denver should be competitive, but I certainly like them better than the Raiders. But I'm not necessarily putting their ceiling super high just because Teddy Bridgewater has proven to be more of that middle of the road producer.
I would tend to agree with that. The Indianapolis Colts won 12-10 over the Minnesota Vikings, but the big story is that Quentin Nelson and Carson Wentz are going to be back on the field on Monday for practice. Oh my. Where are you, Debo, who's busy dealing with another podcast? Like, he's got a secret podcast family. I'm here. Oh, okay. I guess you say Carson Wentz out loud. No, it's like
yeah, my ears perked up.
Yeah,
I will leave you in a second, but I was perked up for now.
Well, I was gonna say, Debo, you are a Wentz apologist. Like you're like me. Like I was a Colts fan last year because of Phillip Rivers. You're kind of a quasi Colts fan now as well because of Carson Wentz. I wonder, Cody, are you? Because I think it's one way or the other, right? Don't Eagles fans they're either like rooting for Carson to be okay, or they just want the Colts to. But
what do you think I am, like the opposite of like a nuanced person? Like, how do you read me? Because
I think you're nuanced. I think you're like you're like Debo, like a generally optimistic and nice young
nice young man.
What's that?
A nice young man.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, but like I can't fathom you wanting bad things to happen to Carson Wentz.
No, I mean, I don't like.
Yeah, but there are definitely Eagles fans out there who are like, I hope he breaks all his feet and he dies.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure people said that. I'm sure people said that about Donovan McNabb when they traded him to whatever. I am of the opinion that. I mean, what are you asking me? What do I think of Carson Wentz in Indianapolis?
Are you rooting for the Colts this year?
Above the Eagles?
No. But the Colts.
Okay. I think Carson.
What would happen to your general demeanor and your heart? In your heart, what would happen if the Colts and Eagles met in the Super Bowl?
Well, you also have to factor just the draft pick. Like, if the Colts do well, that helps the Eagles. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true.
You're turning this into a fan thing. I mean, if the Colts and Eagles win the Super Bowl, there's no question.
I just mean like no. That's not even like. Would you consider rooting for the Colts? Obviously not.
I would feel a little like. If it weren't the Eagles, I would want Carson Wentz to probably get that justification because he's gotten so torched, for a very bad season. But, over the course of his career, it's been more good than bad. And so, yeah, but like, I
guess I'm wondering, like, would you be how scared would you be if you had to go against Carson Wentz with the Super Bowl title on the line?
Not necessarily, not too scared. I mean, it depends how he looks in Indiana. It depends how he looks in Indianapolis, but I'm not necessarily. Yeah, I think like we never saw Carson Wentz in the playoffs besides the game where he got knocked out, and so. I don't have any, like I have 2017 MVP run Carson Wentz, who was, really close to like unstoppable, but we haven't seen that since then. And so, no, I think that Carson Wentz and the Eagles are probably, I think Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts are both better off than they were last year because
I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Carson Wentz coming back to the Eagles, like you may have a safer bet as a quarterback because he's just proven more as a passer than Jalen Hurts has. That's just a fact. But I think Jalen Hurts probably raises your floor because of his. Do you agree with that? I think Carson Wentz gives you the higher ceiling as a prototypical quarterback who can win you a championship, a guy who can make the throws, whereas Jalen Hurts raises your floor because he I mean, his play extending ability it's not Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson, but it's up there. I mean, he could come close to 1,000 rushing yards if he's given free reign this year. And so I think that I like them both. I mean, this is the thing, Will. As a football fan or an Eagles fan, I always end up going down with the quarterback. So whether it's Donovan McNabb, Michael Vick, I mean Jeff Garcia, like I'm with them until they're gone. So
AJ Feely.
Yeah, I mean, not so much him. I mean, I was not in on Kevin Cobb ever, so I don't know.
Oh boy, that was a disaster. All right, last game to cover, I think. Oh, the Giants and the Browns played. My boy Mike Glennon, 10 of 13, 86 yards. Browns. Case Keenum as a backup is a nice little option for them as well there. But they neither of these teams really played any of their starters, so not a whole lot to glean there.
The Giants fans aren't going to like that. We just spent like 10 minutes talking about the Eagles, and then Mike Glennon, 10 passes.
Well, I mean, like Mike's my boy.
No.
Yeah. The other one, the Rams and the Raiders. I gave it that under at 35, and it actually fell down to like 33.5, but it still snuck under. Sean McVay's just not playing anybody. I mean, you just take the under on these Rams and these Chargers games. They just don't play anybody. And so I think that's worth noting. And then the final game from the weekend, I don't think I missed anything else. Houston and Dallas played. David Mills, 10 of 16, 115 yards. Not too bad. The story there for me is the Cowboys say that Dak Prescott will be ready to go for week 1. And I just have this spidey sense concern about what's happening with Dak right now.
He may be ready for week 1, but is he fully healthy? I mean, it seems like all indications are that's not even a possibility that he's going to be fully healthy in week 1. I mean, Adam Schefter, suggesting that he might not be healthy all season. I mean, I know there was some speculation from.
By the way, that when something like that comes out, and I'm trying to source guess on Schefter here. I mean, Schefter's as good as they get in terms of the insiders around the NFL. But when Schefter says that, that's likely coming from Dak's camp, almost as like a precursor to let in case Dak doesn't play well or in case he gets dinged up. And it's not coming from the Cowboys because they're all sunshine and rainbows. It's coming from like Todd France or somebody, an agent or somebody in Dak's camp who wants to get it out there that Dak may be dealing with this throughout the course of the season as a way to set the table. So you don't end up in a Michael Thomas situation where, the Cowboys leak out that Dak's rehab could have been, nobody's going to question Dak's rehab, but you know what I'm saying? Like that, to me, that seems like hey, just so you know, like there's a chance he's not healthy all season. Then if he's healthy and he plays great, he's fine. I really think it's a case where Dak is overcompensating, like physically, because if you shatter your ankle and you're trying to rehab and work and throw the football, you're going to inherently just, change the way that your mechanics work a little bit. I just think that's just natural human behavior from a physiological perspective. And so my guess is that he's probably been, using less legs, more arm on these throws he's been doing. And that may be part of the problem there.
I know, like Pro Football Talk was theorizing about that, and I know others have done that. We were talking about.
For the record, I was theorizing about it before Florio wrote about it. Also,
hey, I give you the credit then.
Somebody check on Florio. Did you read one of the story? He sounded like an insane person in that thing. He's like, he needs to. I'll look it up. But go ahead. Sorry.
Well,
it was the most bizarre paragraph.
We're joking about Carson Wentz, but there's a lot of talk about, when he was coming off the knee injury during the Super Bowl run and came back and his mechanics were all messed up. Maybe we'll see some of that with Dak. I know, like, if you watch Hard Knocks, he's eager to be out there. At least he's saying that to the cameras. Like, he doesn't want to be pulled out of the reps. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense if you make the connection. You're trying to recover from this serious ankle injury. You're probably not trying to put as much weight on it. And maybe you're overcompensating with the shoulder. I think, regardless of how it happened, he's coming off an ankle injury. He's got a shoulder injury. Those are two big things for a quarterback. And I think the Cowboys, you also look at their offensive line, Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. I mean, guys that are up front that have been Pro Bowl caliber for a long time, they haven't been able to stay healthy recently. I think there's a lot of question marks from the offensive line back in Dallas.
By the way, here's the paragraph that I'm referring to. So I was just reading, like, Is Florio like on drugs? What is happening? It's like Dak has incredible toughness and will. He's overcome far more than what he'll be facing this year, but it's a delicate balance. He needs to understand the connection between his brain and his body in a way he perhaps never has. As his legs or arms strive to reach their full limits of their capabilities, the control room sealed inside his skull could be tapping the brakes, even if he doesn't want to do that.
You know what I think it is? You know what I think?
What are you doing, Mike?
I think, you know what I think it is? Mike's been pushing his book, lately.
Oh, you're
He's
right.
probably-
That's a good call. That is a
probably still
fiction
in
writer.
novel writing, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I agree. That I read that. And I was like, that sounds like somebody who's been writing
like a book.
alien fiction and like how it's like trying to write about
The control room inside his head. Yeah.
The control room between his ears. Okay. Any other news or takeaways from the preseason that we may have missed? I think we kind of covered it all, right? We didn't talk about Casey in Arizona, but that's fine.
I think Kyler Murray looked mobile. He looked good. So I don't know, in limited time. So.
Oh wait, you know what? Oh my God, that's right. That game was Friday. So I had told everybody to take the Chiefs -2 the first half, no matter what it was. It was Chiefs -3.5 when it finally opened, and Mahomes threw a just completely uncharacteristic red zone interception when he was trying to run around, and if they kicked a field goal, they were going to cover, and then they somehow get the ball back and score. I think it was Chad Henne hits. Was it Mecole Hardman? I can't get the stats. I'm bringing it up on the NFL's website. There's like a pretty insane touchdown at the end of the first half to cover the first half spread. I mean, talk about that. That's the beauty of gambling, is that this is I'm watching the preseason game anyway, but I ain't like whooping and hollering and about a preseason
that
game.
Preserved your 6-1 record.
That's right. Exactly. It kickstarted it really, Cody.
We should if Debo were here, I don't know if he's gone, but we could have plastered just a huge letters all 6-1.
Debo only uses the captioning for making fun of me. Or it would be like Phillip Rivers retires, Brinson cries, or something like that. But yeah, any other takeaways from the preseason? Pretty nice little meaty 50-minute preseason podcast.
No, I'm just looking forward to. We'll have to do a movie podcast. We'll have to review We'll have to review Mike Florio's book at some point together.
Yeah.
We can.
We'll talk movies. Well, yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you having me on. And thanks, Debo, he was listening. He was with us. He was
listening. Yeah, Cody, thanks for doing it as always. It's a pleasure to chat with you. Good stuff on the preseason. We will be back tomorrow. Season's getting close. We're gonna be talking some fantasy football, be talking some gambling for the just previewing the preseason as a whole. Thanks for listening. Cody, appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks.
See you, man.